We still have flat earthers. We have people that don't believe in vaccinations. And what do we do about it? Well, first of all, I think there's a gene. I think there's a gene for superstition, a gene for hearsay, a gene for magic, a gene for magical thinking.
He doesn't think there's a gene for superstition or magic. He's not addressing the people who question the mainstream approach to interpreting where we live. Is it a rotating sphere? Is it a four-dimensional realm of repeating three-dimensional space? Is it something even stranger? Neither is he addressing those questioning the mainstream approach to artificially boosting herd immunity to certain diseases. He's preaching to the choir. Those who already unquestioningly believe in the globe model, for example. Those who unfailingly believe that vaccination is right for everyone in all cases, and based on several YouTube comments I've seen, believe might just as well be made compulsory, for example. This guy may have a scientific background, but at this precise moment, he's no more acting in his capacity as a scientist than I am. He's a talking head for scientism, a belief system which has grown up relatively recently in the collective consciousness around certain ideas which should be able to speak for themselves, but increasingly often seem unable to do so. I'm a guy with a YouTube channel and an open mind. So in the same spirit, I'll be cross-examining Mr. Kaku and scientism at large, and I'm really only speaking to those who've already decided they're up for taking a more scrutinous approach, let's say, to the cherry-picked topics at hand.
And I think that when we were in the forest, that gene actually helped us, because 9 times out of 10, that gene was wrong. Superstition didn't work, but 1 time out of 10, it saved your butt. That's why the gene is still here, the gene for superstition and magic.
If the hypothetically postulated superstition gene was wrong 9 times out of 10, as Mr. Kaku suggests, would it not have been eradicated from the majority of the population through natural selection very rapidly? Yet all I see throughout human history is what this guy dismisses as superstition. If we were to play along with the premise that it was a genetic predisposition, then a propensity for seeing the divine within the mundane would seem just as important to the success of our species as bipedal locomotion or the development of abstract thought.
Now, there's no gene for science. Science is based on things that are reproducible, testable. It's a long process, the scientific method. It's not part of our natural thinking. It's an acquired taste. It's like broccoli. You have to learn how the power can be unleashed by looking at your diet, for example.
So clearly, this is where he's been leading up to. It's the first time he's played a straight hand so far, and coincidentally enough, this is the first time I agree with him. Science is not part of our natural way of thinking. The scientific method is an artificially created environment in which only certain of our cognitive functions can operate. Science then is a tool, or rather a toolbox full of tools, predominantly purely left-brained in nature. It's a way of thinking about our collective reality, categorizing and classifying it, and when applied practically, it can help us to predictably modify that reality. But it's not a state of mind that once learned becomes your perpetual waking reality. Far from it. So artificial is this way of thinking that with a few notable exceptions, no one spends much time there at all. It takes great effort for most of us to adopt a truly scientific approach to anything, the guy in this video included. Personal beliefs and biases are rarely understood or acknowledged consciously, and will always influence our perception of what we optimistically term objective reality. Theoretical physicist Pascual Jordan, a pioneer in the field now known as quantum theory, said, "Observations not only disturb what is to be measured, they produce it." What does he mean? Our reality might not be quite as objective as we have imagined it to be. I urge anyone interested in diving further into this particular topic to search for the double slit experiment.
So I think 1,000 years from now, 1,000 years from now, we will have flat earthers. 1,000 years from now, we will have people that still do not want to be vaccinated, okay?
1,000 years from now is hyperbole. Science as we know it is just a snapshot in the development of a single branch of human understanding. It's still evolving with no sign of slowing down anytime soon, and with the rapidly maturing quantum physics tapping familiar old Newtonian physics on the shoulder whilst gently clearing its throat, To always throw in our lot completely with the safe bet shows at best a lack of imagination. Many people say that with present-day technology, we should have no one going to bed hungry on planet Earth, no one living without a roof over their head and electricity in their home. Others say that present-day technology is in fact yesterday's technology. Our true capabilities far exceed what is made publicly available. With a bit of luck, in just a few years, the archaic way we manage disease today, vaccines included, will be consigned to the dustbin of history. The way we conceptualize the physical dimension known as Earth will be explored on the macro and hyper-macro levels, just as legitimately as it is explored today on the micro and sub-micro levels.
So what do we do about it? Well, it's a struggle. It's a struggle that's eternal, because I think it's part of our genetic makeup, okay? And there's even a name for some of this superstition. It's called pareidolia. It's the idea that when you look in the sky, you see things that are not there. Let's do an experiment. Look at the clouds and try not to see something there. It's very difficult.
This is where we veer wildly away from garden variety scientism and head off into uncharted philosophical territory. There is an important plot dynamic in evidence here. The idea is that science is really good at what it does, which I 100% agree with. The idea is that science is so good at what it does that it should be at least pretty good at doing other things too. And if there's something that science is incapable of doing, some realm of inquiry that has little to no basis in empiricism and reductionism, that this realm is somehow, well, it's imaginary and therefore unimportant, regardless of how many people have had life-changing spiritual experiences, reversed chronic medical conditions with unconventional holistic approaches, seen synchronicities unfold which defy the laws of probability, had entire chapters of their lives play out in alignment with the movement of the planets and constellations overhead, actually conversed with extra-dimensional beings and visited other dimensions with them. Yeah, we can't test for that stuff, so it must just be some residual LSD you took back in '76 being purged from your body's long-term fat storage.
Recently, the Notre Dame Cathedral partially burned down. And sure enough, somebody said, I see Jesus Christ there. I saw the picture. Maybe you did too. It really did look like Jesus Christ. But it was the ashes of Notre Dame.
You will not find Christ in the ashes of a Roman Catholic dick-waving contest, a piece of toast, or anywhere similar. What he's talking about is a thinking mind-bound phenomenon, not a genuine transcendental experience coming from outside this level of awareness, or from within, as the experience of Christ does. Neither will they say, look here, or look there, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you. Split a piece of wood, I am there. Lift up the stone, and you will find me there. Quotes like these are pretty meaningless when confined to the left brain. But if you can sit with them for just a few moments, if you allow their simple message to permeate your consciousness without judgment and analysis, you'll begin to realize there is something dormant within you that awaits just this kind of cue.
And so that's why I think we will have flat earthers. We will have the people who don't like vaccination, because hearsay throughout human history was the dominant form of information sharing.
I mean, one of the basic misconceptions about the flat earth movement, if it's even accurate to label such a disparate and genuinely grassroots movement as if it was one unified thing, one of the misconceptions is that it never went away.
We still have flat earthers.
We really don't know. I don't believe we live on an 8,000 mile diameter ball of molten iron and rock with oceans and all the rest of it stuck to the outside as it spins through space orbiting the sun. I have no cause to believe that the sun is any larger or more distant than the moon. Neither do I believe the sun is an unconscious ball of burning elements. But I did believe all of these things unquestioningly for most of my life. As is the case, I would imagine, with almost every single so-called flat earther. So that means we're not still anything, we're something new.
We have people that don't believe in vaccinations.
The question marks surrounding vaccination aren't anything to do with belief. The efficacy or not of vaccines has nothing to do with belief. If you're able to find a genuine article, video, or website talking about the concerns surrounding the topic you're welcome to investigate and make up your own mind. It is a topic I've not explored in depth myself as of yet, but I know when something is deliberately buried so far down the search results, there's usually, not always, but usually, something there which we're not meant to see. What we are seeing with increasing frequency is millions of people from different backgrounds and social groups beginning, quite reasonably, to ask questions about where this whole collective experience is going. And it's not just whether or not the collectively held view of what exactly our homeworld is requires an update. It's why we seem to live in some sort of perpetual Groundhog Day, where the privately owned and run central banks who hold almost every nation in the world to ransom keep getting richer, and everyone on each tier down the pyramid keeps on finding their economic leverage progressively reduced. Why the motives for each successive war of regime change in the Middle East are so obvious, yet so little connection is made by any mainstream commentator. Why politicians who would be on top of this stuff if they had any legitimacy whatsoever as leaders aren't even talking about it. Why the so-called journalists who should be calling these clowns out on their second-rate juggling performance actually seem to be part of the show themselves. Why corporations' profit margins and national growth take precedence over people's quality of life, not to mention the planet's well-being. Why the so-called healthcare system is more of a disease management system than anything else. Why the legal system does little more than monetize wrongdoing and monetizes so many innocuous actions at the same time. Oh, sorry, I must have got carried away.
You know, the internet is very new. Newspapers are very new. Science and technology is very new. But gossip, hearsay, slander, rumors, there's a gene for that, okay? So how do you combat it? Slowly, carefully, painfully. It's a painful process, but in some sense we're going up against our genetic predisposition to believe in nonsense.
I'm not even sure anymore if he's still joking about this idea that believing in nonsense is genetic. His entire premise is that one branch of inquiry available to humans is not only superior, but so superior that it renders all others obsolete. Pure scientism. The only reason that people like Michio Kaku, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Brian Cox, and others even address topics such as flat Earth at all is damage control. Flat Earth, geoengineering, many of the more radical alternative health practices, those who question the reigning human species origin narrative, these are entirely grassroots and decentralized movements, existing almost exclusively on social media. Their critics in the mainstream will call this a flaw. This is actually one of the greatest strengths, I think, of such counter-establishment ideas. Want to know why this debate is taking place almost exclusively in the darker corners of social media land? Because it's totally suppressed in the mainstream because it doesn't serve the agenda. Their intent is simply to stop these so-called conspiracy theories gaining any more traction. They don't see the bigger picture any more than Joe Bloggs down the pub, who has zero idea how far away the moon is supposed to be, no clue as to how high you'd theoretically need to be to see the curve of an 8,000 mile diameter sphere, but yet somehow knows for a fact the Earth's a ball. In Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee tells a student, "It is like a finger pointing the way to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all the heavenly glory." What scientism is trying to do, what it is doing in fact, is not just showing us where to look in order to learn, but trying to tell us what we should be seeing. You don't have to agree with everything I do. But if your goal is truly the reclamation of the independence of your own thought processes, you have to unplug from the mainstream. You have to be absolutely ruthless about it. And you have to be fearless of what you might discover about reality and consequently about yourself along the way. Much love to everyone who needed to hear this message. Stay tuned to this frequency for more.